Hello and welcome to Break the Silence, brought to you by Aid to the Church in Need. If you follow us on any social media, please like our series and please promote it, share it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. But turning to Bishop Kenneth, we're really delighted to have you on the programme. We've been looking forward to this moment for some time because as many of you will be aware, Aid to the Church in Need has a special heart for the church in Ukraine and has done for many, many years. And that will become apparent, hopefully, over the course of this podcast as we begin to unpack the story of the church in Ukraine. But for those of you who aren't so aware of Bishop Kenneth, just a few facts. Bishop Kenneth was born in Canada, in North Battleford, and he has been a priest of the Ukrainian Catholic Church since August the 19th, 1989. And he has served as a priest in many different parts of the Ukrainian Church's ministry. And very early in 1991, he was appointed as Chief of Staff to Cardinal Nowakowski, I hopefully pronounced that correctly, who, of course, had this momentous moment of returning as the head of the church, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, after years, decades, in which the church in Ukraine, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, was cruelly and ruthlessly oppressed and indeed forced completely underground. So Bishop Kenneth was there right at that moment. So we're going to come to that in a short while. Then, after being Chief of Staff and Vice Chancellor to His Beatitude, the Cardinal, he then was appointed, I believe, Rector. Yes. A Rector of the seminary. He went back to Canada in that role. So he knows what it means to train young people for the priesthood at a time when the church in Ukraine and Ukrainian Greek Catholics were growing fast as a community. And then he became a bishop, I think in 2007.
Correct.
And he was Bishop of New Westminster in Canada. So he went back to his home country, if I can call it that.
Yes.
Then he had a number of appointments which, within his role as bishop, which enabled him to have very deep engagement with interfaith and ecumenical relations. So we can share a little bit about that. And then in January 2020, just before lockdown, Pope Francis named Bishop Kenneth Eparch of the Ukrainian Catholic Church here in the UK. And he has been in that role for the past 5.5 years, during which time, of course, the church in Ukraine has been absolutely at the forefront of everyone's concerns, worries, and the support that Aid to the Church in Need has had for the church in Ukraine has only redoubled over that time. So we look forward to sharing that with Bishop Kenneth. On June the 13th, I think it was, His Majesty King Charles III named Bishop Kenneth OBE, Officer of the British Empire, which was a really important affirmation from His Majesty for the ministry that you've carried out, especially since 2020, because he was given for services to Ukrainians, I think.
Correct.
So, Bishop Kenneth, that must have come as a surprise.
Well, it certainly did come as a surprise. In fact, I had just returned from Ireland, where I am the apostolic visitor for Ukrainian Greek Catholics in Ireland and the North. And I had arrived back on Friday. We had just agreed to establish one of our parishes in Belfast. And I arrived and I went to bed early because I was very tired, and I knew that the next day, the 14th, the 13th, I was going to be very busy on all sorts of things. And I received a phone call from my press officer at night saying, "Bishop Kenneth, you've made the list." And I, rubbed my eyes and more or less said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You've made the list. You're on His Majesty has named you officer of the Order of the British Empire." And it was a surprise. I felt very humbled, but very honored. In many ways, I was surprised at that, but I thought, well, my family actually has been connected with the British Empire for many, many, many years. And the reason for that is it was actually under Queen Victoria's government that the Minister of the Interior in Canada found that they needed to invite people to farm Western Canada, to settle there, as they called it then. And they started a huge campaign to invite peasant farmers from what was then Eastern Poland, now Western Ukraine, to come to Canada. And if they came to Canada, and if they were a man over the 18 years of age, they would be given something about 135 acres of land.
Wow.
And my great-great-grandparents were in that territory. And in, I believe it was 1846, emancipation of serfdom happened in what was then the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Mm-hmm. And I think my great-great-grandparents had a very, very, very small plot of land by the 1890s. And when they saw this advertising campaign called the Last Best West, they sold everything they had, uprooted all of their family, jumped on a train to Hamburg, and then on a boat to Canada, and then from Montreal, a train all the way to Winnipeg, Manitoba, found their stake, which they had to go to. And really because of the British Empire, my family was able to go to Canada and start a new life there. And so very grateful for that, but also very grateful to His Majesty and for the nomination to this in service to Ukrainians, both here, I think, in the United Kingdom and also in Ukraine.
Well, we know from the Aid to the Church Need perspective that His Majesty the King has been a long-standing supporter of our work as a witness to the reality of persecution today. And we know how much the suffering of Christians matters to him. So it's entirely consonant with our experience of him that he should make such a move. But it's a wonderful tribute to you personally, and it's all the more of an honour to be able to spend this time with you in the wake of that great announcement. But just turning and reflecting a little bit more on what you've just said about your own family story, I believe you're fourth or fifth generation Catholic.
Well, certainly my great-great-grandparents emigrated to Canada in around 1896 and from Ukraine. And so I am probably a fourth generation or fifth generation, depending on how you want to count it. And I grew up on a farm. My father was a farmer. We had a farm. We had both cattle. We had about 100 head of cattle and grain. And it was a great place to grow up. It was a wonderful time to grow up in the 1960s in Canada. My parents certainly raised us as Ukrainian Catholics. We went to our local church there, which was Ukrainian Catholic. In fact, in Canada, there are 5 Ukrainian Catholic eparchies or dioceses. Mm-hmm. And Canada, up until the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, had the largest Ukrainian diaspora in the world. There was something like about 1.5 million people of Ukrainian ethnic origin living in Canada, a population of 40 million people. So a very large ethnic grouping. And in general, I think most Ukrainians kept their culture while being proud Canadians. And also, church was important for them. So attending church was not an option for us, even in the wintertime when sometimes, because of the deep snow and cold, it might have been hard. We still felt that we would go to church.
I remember very vividly one of my first encounters with Aid to the Church when I've been with the organisation for nearly 23 years. And my earliest days with the organisation was really about becoming deeply aware, being told about, having explained to me the Aid to the Church needs role in support of what we might call the rebirth of the church in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Ukraine, after decades of some of the most cruel persecution that could ever have been inflicted on Christianity. And I remember being told by the then National Director, Neville Kirk-Smith, with whom I had a happy experience of working for nearly 20 years in his time as National Director. And he and Father Paul Stenhouse, the then chair of Aid to the Church in Australia, were among those who witnessed Cardinal Lubachevsky's return in I think January 1991.
March 30th, 1991. I was on the plane.
You were on the plane
as was Father Verenfried von Straten, the founder of Aid to the Church. It was a very exciting time. I had been appointed the chief of staff for Cardinal Lubachevsky's Rome office, actually in June or July of 1990, shortly after my own priestly ordination. I wasn't a priest for more than a year, and I was appointed this, and it was quite happily living in Rome, enjoying that, and then we petitioned the Holy Father, John Paul II, if it would be possible for Patriarch Miroslav Ivan Lubachevsky to be able to make a pastoral visit to Ukraine. And it was, the reason it happened was because Gorbachev had visited Pope St. John Paul II, I believe it was December 1st, 1989. And at that time, Gorbachev agreed and told the Holy Father that he would allow the Greek Catholic Church to register, officially register as part of that policy of glasnost and perestroika, openness and transparency. And so we took the chance.
Yes, you leapt on it.
And we'll see how this was. And so we applied for a visitor's visa and asked the Holy Father whether he would grant permission for the head of the church to go to what was then still the Soviet Union. And we organized, along with Aid to the Church in Need and other aid organizations, we chartered Aeroflot, Russian Aeroflot plane from Rome directly to the western city of Lviv. And on that plane was a lot of our bishops, many other bishops, Roman Catholic bishops, and heads of aid organizations, including Father Verenfried, and as you've said, Neville as well. And we arrived, and we were not sure how we were going to be greeted. I mean, there was an advance team that was there that was preparing everything. And I really vividly remember that morning we left the Cardinal's residence in the center of Rome to Fiumicino Airport. Got onto that Aeroflot plane, said our prayers, and took off to the Lviv airport. And when we arrived, it was decided that the passport control officers would enter the plane and check credentials at that time. And so this gentleman that seemed right out of Hollywood Central casting, very rough-looking general type person, came and went to Cardinal Lubachevsky to take his passport. And at first we weren't sure whether it was to arrest, but then he knelt down and kissed the hand of the cardinal and asked for his blessing. And that's really how all things started that day, which was the Saturday before Palm Sunday. We call it Lazarus Saturday in our tradition. And the streets of the city of Lviv were lined by well over a couple 100,000 people welcoming the return of the head of the church. People tossing flowers in front of this. It's about a 5 or 3 mile journey from the airport to St. George's Cathedral, which is the principal church at that time of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. An incredible moment. My job was to hold on to the speech that the Cardinal was going to make from the balcony.
Don't want to lose that.
And did not want to lose that. That was my main job of that day. And so I was able to hand it to him, and he appeared on the balcony of St. George's Cathedral, Metropolitan's residence, in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. It was a wonderful time. But it was only a 10-week visit.
Right.
But almost immediately, the Cardinal and his Rome staff, which I was one, we really felt that it was time to end the head of the Church's exile in the West. And so we quickly prepared a briefing document for the Holy Father, basically to request that we could reestablish the Church and its administrative functions in Ukraine. And in June of 1991, when Pope John Paul II was visiting the eastern Polish city of Przemysl, we went there and met with him and gave him this document, and it was agreed upon that the exile would end. Now, our church had been in its clandestine existence, and so that meant, in many ways, a joyful time, because you didn't have any documents to fill out. It would have been unthinkable to register baptisms and weddings, etc., because that was an illegal activity in the Soviet Union. So, of course, we had no files. We had received back the Archbishop Metropolitan of Lviv's residence, which would be our chancery, but it was bare bones.
Yeah.
And one of the gifts, as it were, that the aid to the Church in need was to give us was the chancery. And so we received as a donation chancery equipment. And in those days, we received 4 fabulous Mac Classic computers and a laser printer and a photocopier.
Which were very advanced in those days.
That was very, very new. And so we received them. And you might ask, well, why were they Macs? And that was because Aid to the Church in Need worked on Mac computers in those days. And those of you old enough to remember would know that not all systems were compatible. So everybody had to have a Mac. And so we all had Macs. And as chief of staff then, I was very grateful that we didn't have to somehow start working on manual typewriters or electronic typewriters. And it was spectacular. It really was a boost up. And so basically from 1991, we were able to reestablish the administrative structures of the Church in Ukraine.
And indeed, the church grew very, very quickly, didn't it, after that point? And I remember Neville saying many, many times the sheer number of seminarians that Aid to the Church in Need was able to support.
Well, if you can imagine, this was 1991, and I believe the total number of seminarians that Aid to the Church in Need was the principal supporter of. We had a few other benefactors, but the principal was just over 1,200.
Wow.
And at that time, it was almost impossible to purchase black material for cassocks. We got that through Aid to the Church in Need. But also, can you imagine supplying 1,200 pillowcases, 1,200 bed sheets, 1,200 breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and paying for accommodations, because we still didn't have all of our own properties back. It was assisted in ways that I think only God will truly know.
Yeah, well, it must have been a huge administrative task for you as chief of staff, managing all of that process. But behind all of that was a vision, of course, a vision that was so memorably set out by St. John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, who spoke very movingly in his encyclical Autunum Sint about enabling or helping the church to breathe with both lungs, east and west. I just wondered what that phrase, which became very much the lingua franca when we at Aid the Church Need were working on all matters to do with supporting the church in East. What does that phrase mean to you, and why do you think it became so sort of central to the church?
I think it means a lot of different things. First of all, quite often, both people here in the United Kingdom and even in Canada, if they aren't familiar with the Eastern churches, well, but you're Catholic, aren't you? They would say. And I said, well, yes. Well, how many people would ask me, well, in my previous diocese or eparchy in British Columbia in New Westminster, how many Ukrainian Catholics do you have? And I would say, we are the second largest Catholic church in Canada and the second largest Catholic church in British Columbia, where our eparchy was.
Yeah,
and everybody would say, wow, because how many Roman Catholics are in the world?
Well over 1 billion, I think.
Well over 1 billion. So if we're the second largest, we must be
pretty big.
Pretty big. But the truth of the matter is there are 24 Eastern Catholic churches in the world. The Ukrainian Catholic Church, of course, being one of the largest, but also here in the United Kingdom, we have the Melkite Eastern Catholic Church, the Syro-Malbarian Church, which is very huge from India. And so there are 24 different Eastern Catholic Church in full unity with the Holy See. We have different liturgical traditions and celebrations. We also have our own code of canon law, but we are in full union. Here in the United Kingdom, Mar Joseph and I often sort of nudge each other. Who is the second largest Catholic church in the United Kingdom? Is it you, or is it my church, the Syro-Malbarian Church? Well, we have in total, I would say, around 50,000 faithful residing here in Great Britain that are Ukrainian Catholics. A smaller immigration than there is in Canada by far, but nonetheless, it's here. So breathing with both lungs, the Western lung and the Eastern lung, shows the fullness, the diversity, but with unity, without conformity, but all, in union with the Holy See under the Pope. And I think that's the essential thing, that we are the same church, but express our liturgical and canonical disciplines uniquely.
And I think it's really important to say, as a Latin Catholic myself, especially in London, how much the wider church has been enriched by the presence of the Eastern Rite churches. And I've travelled widely within Aid to the Church in Need to countries where the Latin church is by no means the dominant church, travelling in Syria, in Iraq, in Jordan and elsewhere. It's really important for us to see ourselves as a part of a wider Catholic family, which, as you say, is all under the Holy Father, but expresses that unity in diversity. I thought I would share with you a few basic facts that since 24th of February 2022, Aid to the Church in Need has given more than 25 million euro in aid. That's equivalent to more than 18 million pounds. So what we're saying is that, for example, with mass stipends, we've given a huge amount of mass stipends, 3.5 million euros worth of mass stipends. So that help over those years has been incredible. Aid to the Church in Need has supported 977 projects in Ukraine since February 2022. And just to give you examples of the type of help. So, for example, we're helping to set up 4 spiritual and psychological counselling centres. We have provided support for 1,900 priests, sisters, and lay people, so that they then can be suitably trained to provide counselling and other.
Well, if I can interrupt you on that, I mean, I'm the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Pastoral Council, which includes our catechists, our priests, our seminarians, and one of the areas of concern is the healing the wounds of war and the trauma that is not only experienced by the general population, which is very, very severe, but also the trauma that our clergy, our sisters, and seminarians are experiencing on a daily basis. Our priests every day are having funerals. And these are horribly tragic funerals, but the funeral is one thing, but it's also the pastoral care of those families who are left without a mother, without a father, without a son, without a daughter. Those families that also family members have become wounded and handicapped because of this. The need for that is incredible. And I know that the Aid to the Church in Need is supporting these initiatives to support the clergy and the sisters who are working with people and helping those people. You're not going to overcome it, but helping them in their daily lives.
Yeah, well, it's so important to our benefactors. If you look at the number who've died, but the support of Aid to the Church in Need has been incredible, and it's wonderful as well that you are announcing an eparchy-wide appeal for Aid to the Church.
That's right. In September, throughout our eparchy or diocese, we're going to be supporting Aid to the Church in Need in a diocesan-wide appeal, and we certainly are going to be encouraging our people to donate and to contribute to this. If I can say, one of the things that inspired me when I first arrived in Ukraine was prior to our arrival, Father Verenfried von Straten provided a large amount of money to print Bibles, the New Testament in the Ukrainian language, and also catechetical books in the Ukrainian language. And this was before plans were to return to Ukraine. He had a vision that the Soviet Union is not going to last forever. So he published or printed all of these Bibles and catechisms, which we then had ready so we could take back with us. And the one thing that he said to us is, do not give them out for free.
I can imagine that.
He said, put a price on them, because if you give something for nothing, people might think it's worth nothing.
Yeah.
He says, sell them the Bibles for at least the price of a loaf of bread. Yeah. And if they can't afford the loaf of bread, then give it to them for free. But give them the opportunity to purchase them for a loaf of bread. And then with those funds, you can republish them again and again and again. And I think that even though our church here in Great Britain has a lot of financial needs, we also know that our people will be very generous, because they know that these funds are going to contribute to assisting their brothers and sisters in Ukraine, along with our brothers and sisters in the Roman Catholic Church.
Only say on behalf of us all, thank you so much, because that support, as you know only so well, is so sorely needed. But it works alongside our commitment of prayer, and I can't help but mention the forthcoming blessing, installation and blessing of the Ukrainian icon of Our Lady of Victories, which is going to be installed in the military cathedral, our military cathedral in Aldershot, St. Michael's Cathedral. And you very kindly said you'd come and preside at that. And I've been personally involved in initiating this alongside a close friend of mine, Captain Francis Osborne from the UK Catholic Military Association. So it will be a dream come true to have you come and preside at this wonderful occasion. So thank you so much. And thank you very much for joining us on Break the Silence. It's been wonderful to be able to just a little bit unpack and share with you the experience of the church in Ukraine at this critical time. If you've enjoyed watching or appreciated watching Break the Silence, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do like Aid to the Church in Need on social media or in any platform of your choice. And above all, please remember the people of Ukraine in your prayers. We would be nothing without prayer. And we give thanks as well for the incredible generosity of Aid to the Church in Need benefactors, stretching back many, many generations, who've enabled that vision which Bishop Kenneth has spoken about, to remain a viable option for the people of Ukraine. Not only an option, but something that you are working towards and building the kingdom of God in Ukraine, even in these difficult times. So thank you, Bishop Kenneth. Thank you for sparing us time, your busy schedule. I know you're about to fly off again soon. Please keep us in your prayers.
Thank you, John, very much. God bless you, and God bless all of those who are your benefactors.
Thank you very much.